Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this virtual opening of the exhibition, Africa Imagined, Reflections on Modern and Contemporary Art, on view at the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I am Belinda Tate, Executive Director of the KIA, and I am thrilled to welcome you to this celebration. At the KIA, we believe that the arts are for everyone. And part of my mission in leading this incredible museum and school is to share artistic traditions spanning centuries from around the world. Throughout the ages, Africa has been an important contributor to all facets of our common humanity. This exhibition specifically offers an opportunity to consider and explore how modern and contemporary art practices have been inspired by the artists of Africa, particularly over the past 100 years. We often experience the influences of Africa in our everyday lives, but we don't always recognize the source of those influences. By examining the history and cultures of Africa and its diaspora, we examine our own histories and our own cultures as Americans and as people of all races and ethnicities. Thus, the stories of modernism shared in this exhibit are important for us all to know and understand. I invite you to listen carefully to the exhibition's curator, Rehema Barber, chief curator at the KIA, and the invited artists who are featured in this exhibition. They will share examples of how the ideas, truths, and myths that surround the African continent have influenced their artistic practices. However, before we begin, please join me in honoring part of Africa's legacy in the US by listening to a traditional hymn by enslaved African Americans. This powerful performance of the song Wade in the Water is by a London based choir named the Spirituals. The choir is led by Junior Gar. Gar has said, with all that is happening in the world today, there has never been a better time for the power of music to bring us together. I couldn't have said it better myself. With the goal of unity in mind, let's watch.
Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God said he's gonna jump in the water. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna jump in the water. We are the sons and the daughters. We gotta stand up and make it loud. Just like I God told the Pharaoh to let my people go, go. We are a new generation from the ones who have come before. He's calling us into freedom to let my people go, go. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God said he's gonna jump in the water. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna jump in the water. We are the sons and the daughters. We gotta stand up and make it loud. Just like my God told the Pharaoh, let my people go, go. We are a new generation from the ones who have come before. He's calling us into freedom, let my people go, go. We never shine at the shade. Give me a papa God ray, make the heavens. If you don't say you know what trouble, let my people go, go. The blood, sweat, and the tears that we gathered through the years. If you don't say you know what trouble, let my people go, go. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God said it's gonna jump in the water. Wade in the water, we did wade in the water, children, wade in
Thank you. I hope you feel as inspired as I feel. Now, I'd like to introduce KIA Chief Curator Rehema Barber. Rehema is a tremendous advocate for the KIA's collection, and she organized this exhibition, Africa Imagined, with support from Dr. Eunice our KIA Kalamazoo College Curatorial Fellow. The show features nearly 100 objects, and 90% are from the KIA's own collection. Please welcome me. Please join me in welcoming Rehema Barber. Thank you.
Hi, Belinda. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to celebrate Africa Imagine, Reflections on Modern and Contemporary Art. And so Belinda is right. Nearly 100 works are on view in our upper level galleries. And we do hope that you'll come and see it through May 1, now open through May 1. So we hope you'll come and see it, and I look forward to seeing you. 90% of those works are from the KIA's collection, and this is an exhibition that displays several new works, both African and American art that we've acquired and added to our collection. Last winter, as we were working to acquire some of these works, I began thinking about an exhibition that would not only showcase our new treasures, but that would also demonstrate how these latest works are actually in conversation with our existing collection of works that are created by European and American artists. As many of you know, the KIA prides itself in presenting works that illuminate the vast and rich cultures with which the American experience is so distinct and multifaceted, which make it so multifaceted. Africa Imagined is an exhibition that was born out of this idea and the interest in exploring how African art has deeply impacted the aesthetics and the practices of European and American modern art. In undertaking this exhibition, I also saw an opportunity to discuss how African art extends deeply into contemporary art practice. As we know, contemporary art, or art that is being made during our lifetime, is a response to the events happening today. And those events are certainly informed by the varying and diverse histories and experiences of people across the globe. Moreover, modern art during its era was contemporary art. And so it is really important to understand that the art of that time reflects the overarching sentiments and beliefs of society, some of which we no longer find tolerable during that period. So the exhibition looks to the complexities of African art and illuminates how modern and contemporary artists have been interested, taken inspiration from, and responded to this incredibly complex and fascinating tradition of art making that has spanned the African continent. While this exhibition does touch on three key themes, escapism, social inquiry, and celebration or cultural reclamation, it is not physically organized within those categories. This is due to my desire to emphasize the physical and contextual conversation that can occur across time periods and genres. In fact, as you walk through the exhibition, which you see behind me, you'll begin to see other themes like manhood, labor and economics, motherhood, family, spiritual practices, and more. And I'm waiting for my PowerPoint. Sorry, technology, folks. Technology. I'm going to try this here. Okay. As I said before, escapism is one of the themes that you'll see in this exhibition. And I thought it was really important to start with Picasso. As many of you art enthusiasts know, that Picasso was very much instrumental in a movement that we like to call Cubism, and even had his hands in Surrealism, And Cubism owes a debt to African art. And Picasso in 1907 went to the Trocadero Museum and began to look at these forms that he was seeing and saw something that really connected with him. And he explains it as being magical, actually, even. And so one of the works that we have in our exhibition that you'll see while on display is the Tête d'Homme à la Pipe from 1912. So this is about 5 years after he has this experience. And Picasso has a very interesting thought when he says about looking at African art. He says, people often talk about the influence of African art on me. What can I say? We all liked fetishes. Van Gogh said we had Japanese art in common. For us, it was the Africans. Their forms didn't influence me more than they did Matisse or Derain. But for them, the masks were sculptures like any others. The masks were not like other sculptures, not at all. They were magical things. So why weren't Egyptian or Chaldean sculptures magical? We didn't realize they were primitive, not magical. The African pieces were intercesseurs. Ever since then, I've known the word in French. They stood against everything, the whole, against the unknown, threatening spirits. I was always looking at fetishes. I understood I too am against everything. I too believe that everything is unknown, that everything is an enemy, everything as a whole, not the details. And so, with that in mind, it was really important to include works by Picasso in this show. And we have several in our collection. And this is an excellent example of Cubism and what he was sort of exploring. We really look at the pictorial plane and see how he begins to break down and look at the forms of African art and incorporate them into his own body of work. Someone like Robert Motherwell really also was influenced by African art. I know that sounds kind of shocking, but he was. And Robert Motherwell is one of the key forerunners of abstract expressionism. And this series is from 1970. So I jumped from 1912 to 1970 here. So that's about a little over 50 years, right? That I'm talking about. So that is important for us to recognize that really there's a long-standing tradition of European and American artists that are inquiring into African art. And this particular suite is from Africa, the Africa suite. This is Africa number 7 and 10. And his exploration of atomism, which is a method of art making focused on the subconscious. And the subconscious can be tracked back to his relationship with Parisian surrealist and French symbolist Arthur Rimbaud, who helped inspire symbolism. And so Motherwell discusses Rimbaud's expedition to Africa and compares Rimbaud's journey to the surrealist break from Dada. And says that his intellectual says that there are different intellectual pursuits that happen as a result. And so the artist innovated his practice to render human faces that resemble African masks and figures, which were indistinguishable from his compositions, backgrounds, and alluded to wood relief carvings. And so I'm not spending so much time on the sort of idea of escapism because this is a celebration. So I really want to get to that part about celebrating and reclaiming. And so I really could not acknowledge Bell Hooks, who has recently departed us and who has heavily influenced some of my thinking about how I look at the world and how I look at works of art. And this is really important. And the idea that if you can make people lose this capacity to create, to lose the sight of who they see themselves of, that work is really truly the completeness of what colonization is about. And so it says that such work can only be done by acts of concrete reclamation. And so I, in this exhibition, premise this idea that there are artists that are saying, you know what, we have to reclaim this. We have to celebrate our history and be in conversation with our heritages and show that there is more to African art than this notion of other. And that leads me to someone like Yahshua Claus. I've been a fan of Yahshua's work for quite some time. And this work, You Learn Stillness to Become More Gentle, is really important. And it features overlapping prints and drawings that reflect his musings on community, identity, and cultural memory. And so for him, his works serve as metaphors for fragmentation of American identity. And so he's juxtaposition of whirling and fractured heads and geometric forms create these dynamic spaces, like you can see here, that challenge ideas about race, marginalization, and urban mythology surrounding Black masculinity. And so by piecing and arranging a selection of patterns laid over a pencil blueprint, the artist completes this portrait. And so in You Learn Stillness to Become More Gentle, he suggests that despite outward turmoil and the burden of others' perceptions, introspection can be a means of survival and ultimately freedom. And he says it's also about a beauty that comes from adapting and thriving in that fractured relationship to America and Africanness. And I could continue to talk about You Learn Stillness to Become More Gentle, which I know is becoming a community favorite. But since Yahshua is here with us today, perhaps I can ask him to say a few words about his practice and tell us how we can see more of his work. Yahshua, are you there? Hi.
I'm here. Thank you so much for that introduction, Rehema. That was beautiful. You know, I'm still moved off that wade in the water intro. And then to hear you speak so highly of my work, my practice really warms my heart. Thanks for having me, Kalamazoo. Rehema, as you know, we've talked, I've been spending a lot more time in Michigan, visiting my family in Detroit and Inkster, Michigan, and tracking their migration from the South to the North. So the work continues about identity, right? And in some ways it's becoming even more personal as I track my own family's migration, like many of our ancestors who made that route from the South to the Midwest for work and industry. And of course, when we do that, we always talk about identity, how identity shifts. The work that we have here in the group show, I think is like, it's so beautiful to see it like in conversation with some of these legends. Romare Bearden is, of course, one of my collage ancestors. So I'm so grateful to be included in that conversation. And collage for me operates as a real ideal way to deal with identity as fragmented. We are all composed from all of these tidbits of our travel, our journey, our experience, the elements in our environment, as well as our genetic DNA. So, that's why you're seeing in that work, there's all of those layers of fragmentation that make the whole.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yahshua. And tell us really quickly before you leave us, I know we need to move on, but tell us how we can see more of your work, and is there somewhere else that we should be looking for you?
Thank you, Rehema. I'm very excited. I have my first solo museum show at the Weller Museum. Thank you. It is in upstate New York, in Clinton, New York, connected to Hamilton College. It opens privately on the 12th, but it will be open to the public in April. I'll be sure to send you that date as soon as I get it. It's an expansive show. I'm so excited about it, and can't wait to share it with everyone.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on, but we'll see you maybe a little bit more at the end, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm getting back to where we're at. Going on to the next slide. This is a new work to our collection, and one of those works that really inspired this exhibition. So I hope that you all will come out and see this particular work. But among the bois abstract and representational masks, like this hornbill mask, depict nature spirits who are responsible for life in our world. While unseen in the physical world, the spirits manifest via the natural forces of nature and the cycles of life. Masks like this one are not maintained by secret societies, but entire families with eldermen charged with their care. And performances of these masks narrate encounters with the spirits and are used during funeral rites, rites of passage, and harvest celebrations. And so masks in these societies symbolize Dwo, the creator spirit's son. And Dwo is believed to be an intermediary between humans and the spirit world, a messenger. And birds, too, are thought to be couriers, bringing messages from the spirits to the people. And then if you look at the top, you see these two figures crowning the mask. They portray the spirit beings who are thought to live in male and female pairs and have families similar to that of humans. And now for me, one of the things that I also really wanted us to talk about with regard to this exhibition is how African art has a different value from its Western counterparts, right? The valuation is the legacy, the continuation of tradition, family practice. It's about longevity and community in a different way than when we look at Western art history. And I think that that's something that we communicate throughout this exhibition, is that while you can look at the aesthetic sort of inspiration, there is really something deeply connected about connection and connection to the community, connection to one another, and connection to the natural and spiritual worlds that are really imbued in African art. This is yet another new work to the KIA collection. This is really a beautiful work, Charles Searle's Dancers. And this was, we can look at this being influenced by Afrocobra, which was a 1970s Chicago-based group of Black artists who sought to translate elements of African culture into an African American context with the use of vibrant colors and themes that celebrate the African American experience. And Charles Searle's works juxtapose the symmetry and patterning of African textiles, and combined with this dynamic color palette, the overall effect is dazzling. And honestly, when you first look at this painting, this is a really lovely work because it shifts and moves when you see it from your first instance of looking at it to when you continue to look at it. At first you think that these are two of the same women, but then you look closer and you really get a better sense that these are very distinctly different women. And so the thing about that you should really take notice of is this is at the height of Charles Searle's career in 1975. And this is after he comes back from his travels in West Africa and really begins a new way of making his art. Because before that, he had been doing more representational work, maybe doing a little bit of abstraction, but really he commits to this particular style for very much of his career after that. And this, another work, is new to our collection. This is called a female figure, or we also call it Gwandisu. In Bamana culture, the initiation into specific societies leads to obtaining social and spiritual knowledge. And after studying for 6 years, inductees, which are both men and women, become members of the Jo Society, which is found primarily in Mali. And so the society's leadership commissions and cares for sculptures like these, which illustrate their cultural beliefs and morals. And so these grand yet idealized figures bear incredible detailing and accuracy to emphasize the figure's power and the Jo's rituals, such as initiation, healing, and social responsibilities. They are also used in Guan, a subsection of Jo, which is why I refer to Gwandisu. And the name itself suggests determination, power, and vitality. It merges Guan, the group's name, which also means hot, hard, or difficult, with Dusu, meaning anger, courage, love, and spirit. And so, really, when you look at the surface of the entire figure, from head to her torso, she is covered with these just intricate carvings, which are meant for spiritual reflection and meditation, right? The next work is Richard Black, Ezekiel's Wheel. And one of the things that I think our community has come to know and maybe appreciate from me, I hope, is my real affinity for abstraction. And so you'll see a lot of abstraction in the exhibition. And that's really because abstraction is a way for everybody to find access. Abstraction is a way for you to see something completely different from what I see, and it's no less valid. And that's the beauty of abstraction, right? Is that anybody can see anything, and that is okay. And so Richard Black is someone that uses abstraction to sort of meditate on the biblical narrative of Ezekiel's wheel, which is a vision of four wheels that illustrates the spiritual divine essence of God and his omnipresence in our reality. And I thought that this was really important to include in this exhibition, not only because of the spiritual connections that can be seen in its work, but also the references in his work, but also because of the visualization, some of the patterning and sort of the breaking of the pictorial plane again. And then I must note that we do, like I said, this show is comprised mainly from the KIA's collection, but we had some key partners that really stepped up for us, like the Flint Institute of Arts, and loaned us work. And so this particular work is called an Osoyen staff, and it's used by Yoruba herbalists and priests that enlist the aid of Osoyen, the spirit of herbal medicine, or Opo Ani, in their work against mental and physical illness caused by malevolent forces in individuals. So the Yoruba believe that the power of Osoyen is vested in a wrought iron staff that is placed on altars for this Orisha, which is the technical term for one of the gods, the Yoruban gods. The staff is composed of a small circle of birds, which you can see, and in the middle elevates a large bird above the small. And birds are emissaries of Ogun, the Yoruba god or Orisha of iron, and refer to the herbalist understanding of power over these malevolent people and so or spirits. And you can totally see this over and over again. You'll see these sort of spiritual connections that are being made in the African works within the exhibition. So now that brings me to inquiry. And I know all you can see that I really like bell hooks, but this is a quote that I actually use within the exhibition itself. I really am a big fan of literature and critical thought and reading. And so I included this because I think that this is a great way to talk about how artists are inquiring about how to extend African art and their practices and incorporate African art into their practices. And I love that she says, and this is an older quote, but it's still relevant now, that we consider the perspective from which we look and vigilantly ask ourselves with who we identify, whose image do we love. And it's only as we collectively change the way we look at ourselves and the world that we can change how we are seen. And so in this process, we seek to create a world where everyone can look at Blackness and Black people with new eyes. And I think that this is really at the heart of a lot of the work that you'll see in Africa Imagine, is really trying to look at ourselves and the world with new eyes. And that brings me to Brent Harris, who is one of our local greats. He is the head of sculpture here in the Kirk Newman Art School. And I really just have to say that as soon as I saw this piece, it just stopped me really in my tracks. And I want to tell you why. It's because as soon as I saw this work, I said, "Oh, wow, you're quoting in Kisi Nkandi." And Brent said, "Yes," which was really a wonderful thing. I have been really interested in Kisi and in Kisi Nkandi for all of my career, honestly, because these are really fascinating works that really proclaim a deal has been done, that a resolution has been made. And sometimes when you see these, they have all of these nails that have been embedded in the surface, in them, and they look sort of dangerous, maybe, or precarious, right? But they're really objects of healing, because anytime you can say that you have a resolution, that's a space of healing, right? And I love that Brent did this work, and he says of this work that he envisions the souls of our ancestors as they are released from this world and in transition to the next, and that the wood is carved and burned intuitively, and that the insertions of iron nails driven into the wood traditionally stir the spirit held inside and are a reminder of the impermanence of our bondage to the world. And I think that's a beautiful sentiment, that we're impermanent, and a good reminder of our ancestors and where we have come from. We must be mindful to look back in order to move forward. And Brent's here with us today, and I just want to make sure we acknowledge him and ask him about his incredibly wide-ranging sculptural practice. I've seen so many different media from him these days. Is Brent here? Can I see you, Brent?
Yeah, right
There
here.
you are. Hi.
Hey.
Okay, so I'm going to say to you, what is there anything you can't carve? Like, is there anything you can't make a sculpture out of? I mean, it is unbelievable. Every time I see a work from you, it's a different medium.
Mhm.
I was kind of flabbergasted, because a lot of sculptors, they really kind of stick to, like, if they work in metals, they work in metals. If they work in clay, they work in clay. If they work in wood, they work in wood. You do it all. What can't you sculpt?
I don't know. I'll try anything. I'll try anything. I mean, if it's like I see myself as a storyteller, and I think art is like a dialect. And what I like to do is just, if there's a story to be told, I try to find the medium that fits the story, fits the narrative, as opposed to putting my particular sort of like limitations. So I like to foreground the story itself. So
Okay.
that's why I like to try the different things. I think it's important.
And I think, I mean, and it just shows your versatility as an artist, that you're able to switch from the different types of media, because honestly, carving wood is not like, molding a bust in any way, or, pouring metal. It's not the same. And so I really have to just give you my hats off. My metaphorical hat is off to you, because I'm just in awe of your ability to be able to switch like that. I think that must be acknowledged. It's difficult. That's not easy work. And so I really thank you for your contributions to our artistic community. I'm really pleased that this work is in the KIA's collection. It is so well deserved. And I also just want to ask you, like, what are you doing now? You have another work on view. You have two works on view in our galleries, right? Like, one
Yeah.
in this show and another.
Yeah,
So
there's a
tell
piece
us
in
what
the
you're doing
faculty
now.
show. Yeah, there's a piece in the faculty show as well, and I think that's dealing more with metal, multimedia metal, a little bit of casting work and a lot of patina work. It's more industrial, and so it's a little bit more of my own personal history.
Okay.
So there's that, and I've got a piece at the Nature Center, the Kalamazoo Nature Center. So I curated a show there, and I have a show, my own personal show in the Vista Gallery, about a lot of sort of animal-human hybrid archetypes. So a lot of storytelling, a lot of folklore narratives that I'm working through.
Nice. And how long is that show on view for?
Through March.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
listen, you keep on curating. I'm going to have you in here curating things.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. One thing I'm working on too is the city of Portage has a Martin Luther King memorial park, and so I'm creating a sculpture and design that park as well. So that'll be coming up. Hopefully in the fall, we'll break ground for that.
Amazing. Congratulations. I'm so excited to see all of you you artists doing your thing in the world and contributing your talents and gifts to us at the KIA. So I say thank you so very much. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I'll
That was great. It's a fantastic show. So I really appreciate
Oh, thank you
it's
so
for you.
much. That means so
Yeah.
much coming from you. I really appreciate that. And I'll see you a little later too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Moving on to out of Gottlieb. You're like, how did this person make your way into this show? And I told you I'm an abstraction lover. And so this is another member of the abstract expressionists. He's actually a founding member of the 10, a group of artists that are devoted to expression and abstract painting. But he was a huge collector of African, Oceanic, pre-Columbian, and indigenous American art and began collecting in 1935. And he really believed in appropriating these cultural emblems to convey nature and the real world. He believed art should communicate with viewers and evoke emotional responses. And he stated, do these images convey any emotional truth? This, of course, indicates my belief that art should communicate. I love all paintings that look the way I feel. And so while Gottlieb's earlier works, which are called pictographs, which come from the 1940s and 50s, are most likely inspired by these motifs found in his collection and others, Figure 8 signals the artist's transition from utilizing non-Western cultural signifiers. However, the print is similar to his mid to late 1960s paintings, which saw radically simplified compositions. And so this is really maybe a bridge between his pictographs and these imaginary landscape series, which I'm referring to before. And despite being defined by a background and pared down symbols that lack any physical likeness to the real world, the artist's desire to create universal and introspective images demonstrates his deep appreciation for African art and other non-Western art forms. And this is William Majors. William Majors is an artist that some people may know for his brief associations with the Spiral Group, which was something that was started by Romare Bearden. But William Majors was originally in Indiana, so he's a native Midwesterner, and he really studies his work. Originally, really was rooted in spiritual reflection, and he does a little bit of representation, but then he really shifts rapidly to the mode of the day, which is abstraction. After his return from Italy in 1962. And so he moves to New York. He becomes friends with Richard Mayhew, who is an artist that you all may be familiar with, that is in our Unveiling American Genius exhibition. And they become fast friends. He becomes a member of the Spiral Group, which is a group that's dedicated to African American artists and civil rights issues. And Susan Stedman, who is a curator and the executor of William Majors' estate, says of him, unlike many of his contemporaries, he did not view his art as a political weapon. His primary emphasis was on the transcendency and universality of art, which is something that, again, I feel like I've communicated before, very similar to Gottlieb, very similar to really what the power of abstraction can hold, is the transcendent and universality of art, even looking back at the Black piece that I looked at before. And so this brings me to another artist that's in the show, Ken Gonzalez Day. And I've known Ken for, actually, I have to give my husband credit for this, because he found the first Ken Gonzalez Day image. But then afterwards, Ken and I become great friends. And this is the another loan work that we were able to use for this exhibition, which came the whole way from sunny California, which I think maybe brought in some sun to us today. And really, Ken's work are interdisciplinary projects that examine the historical constructions of race, identity, and systems of representation within photography and museum collections. And so his constellation series is a body of work that features clusters of objects drawn from various museums, as you can see from the title. So in these works, the artist seeks to examine how cultures, objects, and races are classified and displayed in museums from the 19th century to present. And he actually photographs all of these individual objects first, and then he compiles these constellations. They're composed of various African sculptures and masks from different cultures. The artist uses this cluster to allude to the plunder of African art and artifacts, as well as the history of collecting and presenting these objects to support Western notions of cultural superiority. And Gonzalez Day, he looks at these compositions as conversations with the past, encouraging us to reevaluate how objects have historically emphasized racial hierarchies in art and society. And so I think I have Ken with me now. Ken, hi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do I see him? Yeah, I see you. Hi, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me and for including me in the show. It's a wonderful honor to be near so many amazing works.
Oh, well, I could not include this. I saw this work and I said, oh, wow, this has so many works and has so many layers. And I've been looking at your work for so long. So I thought that this was a really great opportunity for us to collaborate. I would like to ask you a little bit about constellations, if you don't mind, because we talked a while ago and you told me that this is maybe the second time that this work has been seen by the public. And so can you tell us a little bit more about constellations? And this is really surprising, actually, considering a lot of your work investigates museums and objects, right? So I was surprised when you said that. So I'm excited that we get to premiere it in the Midwest, maybe.
Yeah, so part of the project began as a commission that I'm doing for the LA Metro. Oh, did I freeze? Am I still there?
Yes.
So I was invited to sort of work with the LACMA collection. LACMA is our large county museum and is an encyclopedic museum, meaning it has stuff from every different culture. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems that we all know about encyclopedic museums is the way that things are categorized as art, as sort of artifact, as cultural object, and all of us are changing the way we understand how these objects are presented in a historical context, right? As you're doing in the show. So my larger project is looking at the works in the collection of LACMA and trying to break apart some of the hierarchies and structures that have limited the way that we appreciate these objects. So as you mentioned, the amazing thing was I got to photograph them in person. So most of them were in storage and were taken out of storage and photographed. And ultimately, I'll be creating a new composition, which will be in basically in the subway here in LA. So it'll be right outside of LACMA's museum. So if you're taking the metro, you would see these works before you get to the museum. And the idea was that a lot of the objects might be in storage. This would be a chance for people to really see them and study them and take school groups there, and they could go and identify the different objects. As you probably also know, some of the objects were ritual objects, and some of those are no longer used, right? The practices are no longer continued. So this question of how do we present it and what is the representation? So that cluster is all different, basically, as you're noting, symbolic or transformative figures that were caretakers, figures that were ancestors, figures that were resources for communities and that were cared for by communities. And so the idea of the constellations is that each of these collections, so there's also one for Japan and for Korea and for Mexico, that they could be rearranged, that we could rethink how we understand these beautiful objects and change the narratives around them. So that's really the gist of it. Is that a good answer?
Yes, it is a great answer. I mean, and I honestly have to say that this is a testament to your strength as an artist, that these museums even take out things that are in storage and say that, sure, I mean, like you went to the Louvre. I mean, like that's unheard of. I really want to stress to our audience that we don't normally do that. We don't normally, take our objects out and just let anybody take photographs. So I think that really speaks to the strength of your presence and importance in the contemporary art world. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And honestly, you just had a new show that just opened up, didn't you?
Yes, I have a solo exhibition here in LA, which will be up during the time of Freeze if anybody's coming to the LA area for that, at Luis de Jesus Gallery. And you can see all of the images from that show on my website or at the gallery website, which are all linked in. If you just type in my name, it pops up.
Awesome.
And really, if you just type in Ken Gonzalez, it pops up. So
yes. Well, thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for sending the sun our way, because it's sunny here. It's been very cold. But we've got some of your sun. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you a little bit later. And so this is another artist, Hank Willis Thomas. And this work is another work that I'd like to highlight because of it being alone on display from the Montwarch collection in Flint, Michigan. They're another one of the partners that we were able to borrow a work from. So I want to just thank them. And also say that this work was really important in the context of when it was made, as far as in 2004, and what Hank Willis was doing at that time. It's from a branded series that critiques commerce and advertising practices. And in this work, Willis Thomas uses a symbol of global consumerism, credit cards, to comment on the illusion of individual buying power, while also alluding to an industry from which much of American and Europe's wealth was amassed, the slave trade. It also speaks to how credit cards can be a form of financial access or indebtedness, providing people with the ability to pay for daily necessities or excesses, right? And says the artist, in our society, you need a credit card, even if you don't use it. So I started thinking about credit as a form of indentured servitude because of the way we're conditioned to buy into this and carry around all this debt. And then Micheline Thomas. This is one of my favorite works in the collection. Not that all the others aren't my favorite too. I love the collection so much. But I like this. You're going to give me the love I need. And I think that we're certainly in this moment, in this current day, where everyone is saying that we're going to get the love that we need. And I really like this work because Micheline Thomas uses the odalisque, which is a very familiar pose in art history that presents the figure of a woman, a reclining woman, which is traditionally portrayed by European male painters, which symbolize women as being sexually available, idealized, and submissive. So in Thomas's hands, the woman is fully clothed. She's in a V-neck blouse, black skirt, red peep toe pump. She is owning her identity. She is owning her presence and her body. And this woman is not having any bits of being submissive. She is not having any bits of being idealized. And so I really appreciate Thomas's incorporation of bold colors and patterns and textures and fashion to enhance the sitter's energy of and the composition, and to underscore the woman's dynamism and ownership of her sexuality. And she's re-envisioning this odalisque as a Black woman with agency and power, repositioning the formerly subservient subject to command respect and even reverence. And so this is my last slide of the presentation, but is not least at all. This is Sheila Pree Bright's Suburbia series. And you may say, like, why do I have Sheila Pree Bright's Suburbia series in here? But this is a work from this is a work from almost, well, goodness, a little bit over 15 years ago. And it really is one of Sheila's interesting investigations of common economic signifiers of the middle class, like articles of clothing and their environments. And so in this image, we see a reclining woman. And honestly, I just thought about this the other day. I said, wow, this kind of reminds me of the odalisque in a different way. But the magazine cover seems to replace the face of the woman holding it. And Sheila has been very strategic in the use of this prop and the soft lighting to deliberately veil the woman's ethnicity. It's a sly reminder not to judge a book by its cover. But this is really Bright's investigation during that particular time period that questioned depictions of the American middle class or the lack of representation of the Black middle class. The artist asked viewers to question the real and imagined differences of those having the same economic privilege and mobility. Is there such an ideal as a Black or a white home? Or are these deliberately constructed narratives that are perpetuated throughout mainstream media and external social forces? Pree Bright is asking us to challenge these concepts and decide if the middle class across varying cultures has more in common than not. And so I think I have Sheila with me.
Hey, Rehema.
Hi, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks, Kalamazoo, for having me. And my work is like, it makes me feel that the longevity of my work is really resonating with people. And in all of my work, I think it plays an important part and influence in defining society's concept of Blackness. So I always try to find new ways of seeing.
Well, I appreciate your new ways of seeing, even though this is a 15-year-old series.
Right.
I mean, it really had, I mean, it was really important when I thought about incorporating it in the show. Certainly, I could have used some of your newer work, but I really thought that this was important because you were taking your camera and really sort of delving into this idea of perception. And I think that perception is a really this is really a big thing in the show itself, like thinking about what perception is, and then also sort of excising, like revealing a truth, like looking at and saying like there are Black people that are part of the middle class. And so I really appreciated you having that sort of excising that and using your lens of your camera to illuminate that. And then, you know, like I said, I saw this the other day and was like, oh, is this a riff on the odalisque?
No, it's not. I didn't know it's not.
I know. I mean, like here I'm ending with the odalisque, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my goodness, how did the art historian? I said, oh wow. And so I really want to thank you for your contribution and for your work. And I just wanted to ask, like, what are you working on now, and let our audience know how they can see more of what you're doing.
Well, I'm in two shows, one in Atlanta at the High Museum called Picturing the South. And I challenge myself as an artist, moving away from taking pictures of people and photographing the landscape in Stone Mountain. And I am in London too at the Satchel Gallery, but it's part of my work called America in Crisis. And it's my 1960 Now series. But what I'm really excited about, I'm working on two new bodies of work. One is called The Land of Blood and Dirt. And I'm actually going out finding new ways to talk about Black farmers.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm really excited about that.
I'm excited to see those images, and knowing you, they're going to be stunning. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for joining us today. And I'll see you in a little bit. We're having such a good time today. I have one more thing for our friends. So I like to close out today's celebration of Africa Imagined, reflections on modern and contemporary art was something that the KIA strives to do, which is highlight the wealth of diverse artistic traditions that can transform, inspire, and fulfill. By showing a short performance from Ounce of Faith, which premiered at the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in 2019. Choreographed by Daryl Graham Moultrie and performed by Kalia Campbell with the musical stylings of Aisha Jackson and Dante Hawkins. Many of you may already be familiar with this song, which is based on a poem written by James Weldon Johnson, which would eventually become a hymn, which was composed by his brother, John Roseman Johnson, and is more popularly known as the National Black Anthem. I give you Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Also, I want to thank you. Thank all the artists that are in the show, especially those who were able to join us. Thank you, Yahshua Claus, Brent Harris, Ken Gonzalez Day, and Sheila Pree Bright. I must pay a thank you to the Flint Institute of Arts, Louis de Jesus Gallery, and the Montwash Collection in Flint, Michigan for loaning works to the exhibition. Many thanks to the generosity of the Michigan Council for Arts and Culture and the David and Muriel Gregg Estate for their sponsorship of Africa Imagine. And I'd also like to thank Belinda Tate, KIA Executive Director, the entire exhibitions team, Andrew LeMay Cox, Amy Passett, Catherine Ransrodham, and Eunice who did assist me with many of the details of this exhibition. And a thank you to the rest of the KIA staff and crew. And hats off to Advancement Team for helping produce today's program. And don't forget, if you like more programs like this one, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a great weekend, everyone.